Okay, entering the Delaware. Oh, it's warm. Alright, come on, guys. She's floaty, floaty. Oh. Was it in here? No. Oh, it's a bit.
So this project we conceived with a group from Bexhill College, an amazing group from Bexhill College, and the Blueprint Collective, who are a young people's collective, part of the Warr Pavilion. And this the work sits within a wider range of work, which is part of a residency we have between the Westdean College, Warr Pavilion, and Wellcome Collection in London. And that's focusing on rewildings. But rather than the practicalities of rewilding, we're kind of looking at rewilding from a conceptual point of view. We're trying to kind of problematize and think through what it means to kind of define wild and what the wild things are, and where those lines are drawn between what's wild and what's not, between kind of what's anthropocentric and what lies outside of that. So we've been looking at this particular context being on the sea, on this littoral context, which is where the word LIDO kind of comes into play, and thinking about how that's prevalent to this particular context, but also through the methods that we've kind of established as a means of investigation. So foraging, knapping, how can we also kind of do that, not just our immediate environment, but also for experience? How do we forage experiences? How do we forage memories and kind of emotional attachments to the area and bring those into the space in a kind of meaningful way?
A part of the workshop program that we were doing, we were trying to understand the context and the local context through the eyes of the young people, so through the young people that we're working with. And they took us on we did a series of audio walks, and they were constantly kind of talking and reflecting about their environment, which drummed up a few quite like continuously referenced areas. So Edgerton Park was one that continually came up. So there's a few little prompts that we've taken. So throughout the residency, we've taken prompts from the different environments that we've been working with, and some of the kind of things that you see in the space. So the swing, and you'll see the running machine as well. Those are all kind of prompts from the conversations and the explorations that we've done with the two groups that we've worked with.
It's actually really cool in the summer, this place. Do you remember when that was first built? People would like jump down. I was one of the cool kids who would jump down.
I think I lied. I have drunk here before, so I remember laying on that spinning thing.
No.
And like spinning around, just laying down.
It seems so much smaller than anything.
Flint came up initially in our investigations with the Westdean. So it was like very prevalent to the local area in Westdean. It was all up around the grounds, all up on the building. So we did a little bit of digging into the material, and we found that it kind of worked in like a macro and a micro scale. So from a macro scale, it's quite a good example of this kind of proximity that we have had with nature or within nature for a long time, and thinking about that kind of those historic instrumentalization processes and how that can kind of raise some serious questions about when we look back to and the times that we hark back to, and how we might think about that as a kind of critique of rewilding moving forward. But then also from like a very specific point of view, Flint knapping involves kind of striking and the percussive activity on flint. And each time you strike the flint, you kind of open up a new you open up a new page in the investigation. So you kind of strike it and see, and it becomes a way of seeing as well as a way of manipulating the material. And I think that's the approach that we've taken throughout our residency. So rather than kind of coming with a preconceived idea of what rewilding might be and what it is in these local contexts, we've tried to kind of make each action and then kind of let that lead us to this next point that we take. So kind of method knapping, if you will.
Knapping breaks flint through a type of fracture called conchoidal fracturing, which basically kind of creates these ripples in the flint material, which we've sought kind of we took inspiration from that, and also obviously the kind of geographic context of like the waves of the sea, and we tried to devise a kind of device or an object that would be somewhere kind of ambiguously between those two things, the napped flint and the waves around us. And those become objects with which we are trying to encourage people to sit on and to enjoy themselves in, and just to be leisurely in, and to create this to recreate this not just as a kind of exhibitive space, but rather as a kind of leisure space. And so that's kind of what we call this, a leisure space rather than an exhibition per se. And so the idea is that people can really be in and kind of embody some of that research and some of those workshops that have gone into the production of the space by sitting, by kind of touching, by being in and around, by kind of laying down, and by kind of just being, I guess.
Oh, so Bexhill was quite dull, boring, greys, but when you add a bit of colour, it makes you happy. Oh God, it's quiet.
It's really nice. I like there's records on the wall.